Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am Mercedes and this is the Frugal Life with Mercedes. So today we are going to talk about coulda, woulda, shoulda. Now, I hear people say those kinds of things a lot. And I believe that it is human nature to analyze our decisions, whether they are from the past or the present, or even analyzing possible decisions you will make at some point. And that is important, one, because if you don't like something and that situation comes back around, you can make a different decision. And also as far as like future plans, it gives you time to kind of think about, well, what would the consequences of these decisions or choices be? And consequence has a negative connotation, but consequence can also be a good thing. Like not a disciplinary, but if I put down this boundary with this person, they probably won't talk to me anymore. But if that person is weighing you down or not adding to your life, well, that's a consequence because you might miss that person. But in the end, it is better for you as a person and your growth. But the problem with coulda, woulda, shoulda is most people get stuck in that loop instead of pushing forward and accepting the decisions that they made. I see this all the time. And a lot of times it's things that are completely out of your control. Like, let's say you bought a house before the '08 housing crash and you ended up losing that house. Well, yeah, in the scheme of things, shouldn't have bought that house, or you know what, those mortgage rates and that whole thing at the bank sounded too good to be true. I shoulda, woulda, coulda, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes, like, you had no idea that was going to happen, or that maybe there was a sketchy business investment, but it seemed legit, and people you knew did it, and it was legit, but by the time you got around to it, it wasn't. If somebody passes away, yeah, your life would be different if that person hadn't passed away, or if your parents hadn't gotten divorced, or your significant other hadn't cheated on you, or hadn't started taking drugs, or started drinking alcohol into excess, or became a gambler, or financial infidelity, like things that like are beyond your control because they're other people's decisions. And we can't read people's minds, and we cannot see the future to see how something is or isn't going to pan out. What we can do is, you are faced with a decision, and you should be thinking about those decisions and possible pros and cons, and you take the information that is available to you, and depending upon the situation, do some research. Ask a therapist, a religious advisor, a trusted friend, or somebody that maybe is an expert in that particular situation, whether it be some sort of surgery you're contemplating having, or buying a house or an investment, what have you. But then you have to make the decision, and you should never make decisions that you're not comfortable with. And I know that that's easier said than done, because we've all been in situations where a decision had to be made, and maybe it was like crappy and rock, and you had to pick crappy or a hard spot. Do you know what I mean? But that's life. What I don't want is for you guys to get so stuck on should have made this decision, could have done this, would have done this, blah, 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 blah. Because as I said, people get stuck on that, and it stunts their growth as a person. You know what I'm talking about. We've all met those people where something happened 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago, even just a couple of years ago, and they're so angry at so and such did them wrong, or this and this and this, or I feel shame, embarrassment for making those decisions, or, well, it didn't pan out the way exactly how I wanted, so I'm just going to throw a tantrum for the rest of my life. And when I say tantrum, I mean like basically going through life doing the very bare minimum and never really living again, depending upon what happened. And some of these things I've seen happen with really small things. Now, I'm not trying to minimize anybody's feelings, because obviously if something happened 20 years ago where you lost your home or you were conned out of investments or something like that, like that's devastating. But you can't let it stunt you as a person. Now, I'm going to share a very quick story that I've never shared before. So I shared the story about how my first husband left me for his work wife. Well, part of the story I did not tell was shortly after all of that, I actually went to the bank and said, what kind of position am I in to buy a home? And I was approved for a first-time home buyers, low income, like, what is it, FHA or what, whatever it is, home loan. And it was going great. I actually picked out a townhouse. My mortgage was going to be like $500 or $600 a month. It was like a 3 or 4 bedroom townhouse. It was so cute, and I already had signed over the check for like closing costs and all that. And then I got a call from my realtor saying that there was something wrong at the bank, blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that my paperwork was not done properly, and my debt to income ratio was too far off. And at the time, the only thing I had like student loans, and I had a very small car loan at the time, but I didn't make a lot of money. So when they told me I was approved, I was like, how is that even possible? I was like, oh my gosh, this was so easy. And we were like on our way to closing, like not exactly like I wasn't in the car, but it was like, coming up. And so when I went to the bank, I guess something was done with my paperwork. A number wasn't put in right or something like that. Nothing of my fault. I'd given them all the information. And they basically said, if you want this townhouse, you're going to have to give us more of a down payment. And it was a lot. Like, I'm talking like $10,000, $15,000 more than what it initially was. And I didn't have that. And of course, because they were the bank, they knew I didn't either. And their response was like, oh, well, ask your parents for it. I'm sure your grandparents would take care of that for you. And I was like, first of all, I said, I want to do this myself. And I said, second of all, you shouldn't assume that somebody would or could do that for me. And I had a friend at the time, and I was relaying all this to him, and he was like, well, talk to this this person in banking who was a friend of his, and he said she will explain to you what's going on. He's like, your bank is being like super sketch, blah, blah, blah. So I set up an appointment with this lady, and she was like, yeah, honey, you should have never been approved for this loan. She was like, this is like not cool at all. And luckily she knew my realtor, and she was able to talk to my realtor and get my money back. Because it was supposed to be a non-refundable situation, but luckily the realtor talked to the other realtor, and I was able to get my money back, and I missed out on that townhouse. Now, the reason that I am sharing this is because for a long time I beat myself up about that situation. And I have trauma regarding that situation. Now, that is a small part of the reason why I'm not a homeowner now. I will talk about why I don't own a home in another video, because it's very complicated and multi-parted, and you guys already know that there is no simple answer with me. Like, I am all about the feels and all about the logic, and so there's many reasons why. But that is a big part of it, and I explored that in therapy a while ago. That was such a traumatic experience for me, and I beat myself up for a long time about, if I would have done this, I could have done this, I woulda, coulda, shoulda. And at the end of the day, the mistake was with the bank. the person that approved me for that loan, they are at fault. I was honest. I gave all my information. And that's, and the reason that I'm sharing that is because that's what I mean. That can stunt your growth, and that can cause you fear to not move forward with a specific situation. But at the end of the day, when you process it, I am not at fault for somebody not doing their job properly. I could have saved more before I went to go look for a house. But honestly, when I went to the bank, I thought their answer was going to be no. All I was looking for was, how close am I to being able to buy a house? What can I do to get in a position to buy a house? I didn't know they were going to approve me for a loan. I had no idea. I was completely surprised. And that was me doing my research to help me make a decision. And so I allowed that to stunt my growth in a lot of ways and beat myself up about other people's choices. And yes, there's a million things I could have done differently in that situation. But considering the circumstances, I think I handled it the best that I could. And you have to also forgive yourself when you do something. In that situation, I don't forgive myself because I don't feel like I did anything wrong. I asked questions and got a very surprising answer, and then it didn't pan out. But I am responsible for the way that I reacted and held a grudge and resentment towards myself for that situation. So remember, whether it's with finances, a relationship, whatever it is, it's okay to think about the coulda, woulda, shoulda to a certain extent. To figure out why this went wrong, what could I do different next time? Because I'm going to tell you that most decisions that we make in life will come back around. There will be a day when I go to buy a house and it'll be a completely different experience. There will be a day where a relationship ends and how you can handle it trashy or you can handle it with class. A work thing happens. How do you handle it? Financial decisions come up. How do you handle it? And every decision we make, we have a choice of how we handle them, and try not to beat yourself up too much. Okay, guys? So thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to my channel. And until next time, bye.